All right, so in our final article of today, we're looking at CloudFront supporting HTTP3 powered by QUIC. All right, so this actually came out about 10 days, August 15th. So wow, time flies. About almost 2 weeks ago, we didn't make it in the last one, so that we'll bring this up now because it is interesting. I mean, HTTP is a pretty fundamental protocol in all of our lives, so the support for the relatively new HTTP3, how is this going to affect our day-to-day operations?
So this one is actually really interesting. Just for some history, HTTP was the first protocol that was purely TCP. Then came HTTP2, which actually came out of a bunch of work from Google and then became a standard over a period of time, which basically brought in a bunch of other efficiencies which HTTP did not have, and it started bringing in SSL and security into the HTTP protocol. What we started realizing is that at some point in time, there was a need to get more efficient in the way the page loads were happening. And so again, at Google, they created the first version of the HTTP3 protocol, where instead of making these really heavy duty connection, the connection protocol in TCP is pretty heavy duty. So instead of doing that, they started leveraging a UDP based connection, which became a lot more efficient. And of course, all the reliability things that came with TCP were implemented in a slightly different manner in this new protocol. But in effect, it makes the HTTP3 is about, was it 30% faster? Or somewhere between 20 and 30% more performant. I think the way it compresses stuff, the way data transfers can happen, the way site page loads come up, they are about 20 to 30% more performant than HTTP2. And interestingly, the committee of standards is still deliberating on what HTTP3 should have. Right now, there's an ad hoc series of documents which are being used by all the different vendors of browsers. So whether that be Microsoft or Google or Brave or name it, they've all implemented a version of HTTP3.
I'll put this in the chat. Look, here's RFC 9000 supported by 9001, 9002, and 8999. So there's QUIC version 1 is now formalized, but yeah, there's still...
Correct. So this is QUIC version. So this is the protocol, but HTTP3's protocol definition has not yet been standardized. It's still in deliberation. So they expect the RFC to come out probably by the end of the year. But there are already, like most major browsers, already support HTTP3, at least in the way it stands today. There are edge cases that are different, but we expect that IETF will make this a standard by hopefully the end of the year.
Well, it's amazing how they even quantified the amount of work they're putting into talking about it. 5 years, 26 in-person meetings, 1,750 issues and thousands of emails. That's pretty neat. And it's good that they can release a new standard that, like they said, you're not locked into the previous things. There's certain things that we do now. We do a lot more streaming these days than we used to do. And so it's good to have support for things where you don't necessarily need to know if every single packet got delivered, but you want to get those packets as quickly as possible. And thus,
I think one of the other factors is also backwards compatibility. That's kind of like a mandate for these protocols. And to make sure that the new protocols are completely backwards compatible, I think is the big debate and argument right now in the committee for this particular protocol. I think I was reading about it somewhere. So, I mean, it's no surprise because when you actually look at the RFC when it gets published, which has all the information about every discussion and everything else that happened about that particular decision, it's no surprise that it takes an entire committee to come up with these, with tons of deliberations, tons of work going behind the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, I still follow, I don't use it very much anymore, but I still follow the evolution of the C++ compiler, and then the C++ standard, and reading how that evolves. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and it's to really fight feature creep and have that balance between backwards compatibility and looking forward. And it's a tricky thing to navigate. Yeah. So I'm glad I'm not doing that, but I can enjoy the benefits of it. And so for this particular article itself, with CloudFront, it supports HTTP3 powered by QUIC. So looking
you just have to click one checkbox, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and it turns it on for you automatically. It is completely backwards compatible, so any browser that doesn't support HTTP3 will continue to work via HTTP2, and that'll just work seamlessly. You wouldn't have to do anything else differently.
Well, looking at this, so this is great. I think this is what you're talking about in terms of article quality. So they had to enable it on your distributions. You can edit through the console, through an API action or a CloudFormation template, and they give you a link to a CloudFormation template you can use. This is still going to work using previous versions. And look, it's available on all the edge locations at once. That's really good. There's no extra charge. This is great. It's hard to say, okay, it's available everywhere. Here's one CloudFormation template you can run. Here's interesting links. I think this is doing pretty well as far as.
It's pretty good. I actually think this one is actually really good. It covered a lot of the technical details, and I was able to research, a lot of stuff around this HTTP3 implementation from AWS relatively easily. So I would give this a pretty high score. Maybe 4.5, 5, 4.5.
Ooh, all right. Well, we're setting a precedent with this 5.
I hope that we are constantly raising the bar. Was that a 4.5? Yeah, it looks like
that's a 4.5.
Yeah.
I don't know what they could have done. Should we? Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
There we go. Let's put it at 5. That's pretty good. They've got it's all regions. Doesn't cost anything else. Here's a CloudFormation template. Here's a reasonable amount of text about how it works.
Yeah, I think the blog post is pretty good. And overall, I think it also simplifies. So yeah, I would give it the simplifies tag.
Awesome. Yeah. Especially it's backwards compatible. All you have to do is run a CloudFormation template. Right. You don't have to, and nothing is going to break, because if the protocol doesn't support that version, it'll fall back to the previous one.
Exactly. So it's relatively straightforward.
All right. Well, I think this is a good place to stop for the day. It's been a really good discussion. Some interesting articles. It's really fun just seeing how far we've gone. I remember when we were talking about that 12 terabytes of RAM. I remember being a young teenager and saving up for one stick of 32 megabyte EDO RAM. And so thinking we've gone from megabytes to gigabytes to terabytes. So I think in another decade, we might be seeing this as petabytes. And this instance that we're talking about now might be the size of the Raspberry Pi 7 or whatever. Maybe the Raspberry Pi 10.
By the way, the first machine we were able to afford to buy was actually a 386, and you're talking about 32 MB of RAM. I had 4 MB of RAM, and that is a big trade-off, because the 4 MB of RAM cost about half the cost of the entire machine. It was that expensive back then.
But did your machine have a turbo button?
Yes. So this was a 386 DX266, which operated at 44 megahertz.
Yep.
And it had a turbo button that would bump it up to 66 megahertz.
Mine, I remember.
We're talking about megahertz and not even gigahertz.
I had a little 2-digit, 8-segment display, and ours was from 8 megahertz to 40 megahertz. And I remember this because you can play Tetris and you hit turbo and just have all the pieces just right to the bottom. It's, oh man.
Well, that's a 5x improvement in processing speed. We used to go, so my machine used to go from 40 or 44 megahertz all the way up to 66 megahertz, because it had the DX266 processor. And a 386 had that. Even though I originally started working with just the AT machines, where you had 2 floppy drives and you plug the first one in, which would boot up your half the OS, then plug in the second one, which would be the second OS, of course DOS only, and a second part of the OS, and it would boot up, and then you would put in the third floppy to do anything else that you really wanted to do.
Well, there is an old computer museum over here in Seattle. So next time you're in town, you have to go over there, bring the families, and let them see these machines that we grew up on, and maybe they'll appreciate what the CPU power they have today. All right,
and there's an interesting one in Palo Alto as well. If anyone wants to go check that one out,
well, that'd be cool. All right,
awesome.
Well, thanks again. It has been a really good segment, and we will see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone. See you all next time. Bye-bye.